Hello again, and welcome to the second episode of this series looking at a moment from each season of the Premier League. Now, don't fret if you missed the first. Each episode is separate in itself, and last time we looked at the first day of the season, the 1992-1993 season. Today we're going to look at 1993-1994, and we're going to look at the very last day of the season, or should I say, Survival Sunday. A moniker coined by Sky Sports to describe the desperate travails of Premier League sides fighting against falling through the trapdoor and into the second division of English football. Over the course of the last 30 years, we've witnessed some absolutely breathtaking drama. 1996 brings to mind, where Manchester City suffered the ignominy of relegation after mistakenly spending a significant portion of their last match against Liverpool, believing that a draw would be enough due to faulty information coming in from elsewhere. Also, there's West Brom's absolutely miraculous escape in 2005, when they became the first club to survive that were bottom of the Premier League table at Christmas. But today, one of the very first will be discussed, when the term Survival Sunday was just a twinkle in the TV producer's eye. And that was actually when we saw one of the most dramatic Survival Sundays with a real no moment. The action centred upon two incredible matches. The first at Goodison Park, where Everton played Wimbledon, Everton desperately struggling to avoid the drop. This ticket's an unused one to the game, director's box, and I've actually just had to reinforce this with a bit of sellotape because I hate doing that, to be honest, to tickets, but it was literally going to come off otherwise, so I had to do that. And then the second, where Sheffield United, a beleaguered Sheffield United, travelled to Chelsea at Stamford Bridge. Now, Chelsea tickets can be a bit annoying to interpret in the 1990s and the 2000s, to be honest, because they don't actually put the years on the ticket or the date, so you have to do a little bit of detective work to know, and there are different ways around it, looking at sponsors and other things as well, colours, designs, but this is from the 1993-1994 season. We'll pop them there. 1993-1994 was the year of Merlin's first Premier League sticker album, and these poor fellows on the Everton page were in a spot of bother. Although Everton struggling now is not incomprehensible given their issues in recent years, rewind to May 1994 and the tribulations of the Toffees were scarcely believable. They had been one of the big five in English football that had instigated the breakaway group to form the Premier League that I discussed in the last episode with crosstown rivals Liverpool, Manchester United, Arsenal and Spurs. And at the time of that final day of the season in 1994, they'd had more wins, they'd gained more points, they'd spent more time in the top division than any other club in English football. They'd also been English champions within the last decade, so this was a big deal, Everton struggling. As things stood on that final day, poor Swindon had long since been relegated and had only managed a pretty paltry 5 wins all season. To be honest, it's incredible to think that Swindon Town were once a Premier League club, and we've seen it again with Luton coming into the top division, even though Luton, I guess, historically were quite a big club. Swindon really weren't aided by the departure of player-manager Glenn Hoddle in the close season to Chelsea to take on the same role. At the time, Hoddle was an innovative young coach that would obviously later go on to manage England, had a mixed time there, and John Gorman, his assistant, took on the role at Swindon and unfortunately couldn't step up to the main role. Oldham Athletic, architects of their own great escape 1 year previously, had needed to win at Norwich. A Norwich that had beaten Bayern Munich earlier in the season in the UEFA Cup. Oldham started the day on 39 points and their chances of staying up were looking slim. The two teams share this double-page spread in the album with their respective club file pages that follow the portrait stickers of one team and then precede the portrait stickers of the following club in alphabetical order. Each of the 22 clubs have one with the prismatic club crests here, the traditional Norwich canary, the Oldham owl, a double sticker on quite a pleasing lime green background of the team's star player, and also some directions to the ground, which if you're wondering how to get to Boundary Park in Oldham, you exit the M62 at junction 20 and take the A672M to the junction with the A664. Now, I laugh, but my dad will be watching this. He's one of the few people that actually watches these videos. And he may not remember this, but we went to the Umbro Cup at the City Ground in Nottingham in 1996 for a pre-season tournament with Chelsea, Man United, Nottingham Forest and Ajax. And actually, he went to the Merlin Premier League sticker album in 1996 to get the instructions to the City Ground. So maybe they were useful. The other team in trouble were Ipswich Town, who had a tricky away fixture against runners-up Blackburn at Ewood Park. It's unknown whether the Wimbledon coach driver used this album for directions on how to get to Goodison Park, but Wimbledon arrived on a high and in a lofty 6th position in the table. They were coming off the back of 7 matches unbeaten and won an absolutely fantastic run, with 2 of their conquests in those 7 games being champions-elect Manchester United and the aforementioned runners-up Blackburn Rovers. Sam Hammam, the eccentric Wimbledon owner, had felt smited in the past by Everton. It says it in Dave Bassett's biography. He had a personal grudge against Everton, having had the impression that he'd been snubbed by them at some point in the 1980s, and he desperately wanted to inflict relegation on Everton so much that he incentivised it by offering his side an all-expenses-paid trip to Las Vegas if they were to emerge victorious. Now, that is a pretty scary thought. The Crazy Gang, featuring John Fashanu, Vinnie Jones, Dean Holdsworth being let loose in Las Vegas. They had all the potential to make The Hangover look like a teddy bear picnic, by all accounts. And unfortunately for the Toffees, buoyed by the thought of a period of reckless abandon in a Nevada desert, Wimbledon raced into a 2-goal lead, courtesy of a Dean Holdsworth penalty and a deflected Andy Clark shot. Just before half-time, Anders Limpar, a mid-season transfer from Arsenal, sensed the desperation, flung himself to the floor with the most minimal of contact from the defender. The referee bought his dive and awarded the penalty, and Graham Stewart converted it just before half-time to make the score 2-1. But in truth, the Toffees really weren't playing well, with Wimbledon spurning numerous opportunities to put themselves well and truly out of sight and condemn Everton. The Toffees really were in a sticky situation. When the half-time whistle went, Everton was still staring precariously down the barrel, and worryingly, none of their relegation rivals were losing. In fact, to make matters worse, Sheffield United were 1-0 up at Stamford Bridge against Chelsea, whom had their eye firmly on the FA Cup final against Manchester United the following weekend. Now, travelling to Stamford Bridge wasn't the ominous task that it is today, or it was for a period of time, with Chelsea's interest in this game being limited to whether they finished 14th or 15th in what had been a desperately disappointing league campaign. One man, though, had a point to prove, and that man was Mark Stein, Chelsea's South African striker, who'd made a mid-season transfer from Stoke City. He had been out with an injury for the past few weeks prior to this and had been on the bench for his return match. He was desperate to prove his fitness in time for the showpiece final at Wembley the following weekend. More on that later. Half-time in the matches and the halfway point of the album, with a spread showing the kit of all 22 teams in the Premier League, showing a prismatic home strip and the away strips. There are some fantastic retro kits here, and I'm just going to bring them more into focus. It's a shame the Aston Villa one doesn't have the Muller sponsor. This was actually an absolutely fantastic kit. And we'll just give a bit more of a pan. But yeah, some brilliant retro shirts there. Evoke some memories for Premier League fans of yesteryear. I should actually also mention that if stickers aren't your thing, Merlin did release actually what they called exclusive limited edition collector cards for the season that were released as complete sets, limited to 5,000. There were no packs, but all 120 cards came in this box. And there's numbered, as I said, to 5,000. This one, number 141. And the 120 cards represented each of the 22 Premier League clubs, with some clubs, some of the bigger teams having 6 cards, such as Arsenal on the front here, Anders Limpar. We mentioned him a moment ago, actually, before he went to Everton. But then some of the smaller clubs having 5. Just going to have a very quick flick through. Chelsea, 5, no comment. But this is it's actually a really nice set. I'm not going to go through all of them, but there are some actually quite important cards in this set. As you can see in a nice Staples ring binder, which is Pretty Village. In hand, they're actually very interesting. They have the first cards for Manchester United for Eric Cantona and Roy Keane. And they actually also have the rookie cards for 2 legendary Premier League strikers, Robbie Fowler and Andy Cole. Now I hope the camera shows it up. I'm going to just zoom in on the Fowler one, because actually you'd think it was just like a scanned high resolution image, but actually it's a genuine sort of scan of some crests. So you can see the fabric and the embroidery on some of them. It shows up better on the Manchester United one here with Keane. So it almost gives off the impression of a patch card. So it's quite a nice set actually, and you can they came all at once, so no packs, like I said. After the half-time recess, Holdsworth had another great chance cleared off the line, and soon after, Everton equalised with this peach of a volley from Barry Horn. Everton was still going down, but Goodison believed. The momentum had shifted and they were building up a real head of steam. The comeback was complete in the 81st minute when that man, Graham Stewart, scored his second goal of the day to lift them out of the relegation zone. And they were to be safe now. Sheffield United had been 4 places above the relegation zone at half-time and had replied to a Chelsea equaliser to still be leading 2-1. Mark Stein, though, emerged from the bench and, hell-bent on his place in the FA Cup final team, scored to make the score 2-2 in the 76th minute, and the Blades' nerves begun to jangle. With that said, all they had to do was better or match the Ipswich result at Ewood Park and they would be safe. Playing Blackburn away was a tough match, and the following season Blackburn would actually go on to win the Premier League. The final whistle sounded at Ewood Park and in a 0-0 draw, and Sheffield United knew just that in a few seconds they'd be safe as they were drawing 2-2. But in stoppage time, that man-possessed Stein delivered a dagger of his own to the hearts of the Blades. The goal was the last kick of the match and sent Sheffield United down. They will be playing their football in the First Division the next year, now the Championship from August, and it would take them 12 years to make it back to the Premier League again. Unbelievably, that was also a season where they suffered another incredibly unfortunate and definitely more controversial relegation, but more on that later. The truth is that the Premier League is the very zenith of football for English clubs. The richest and most watched league in the world, probably not with the Saudis anymore, but it's a recipe for high stakes, high tension, high drama, and this was demonstrated none more so than on that epic day in 1994 with a match still vividly remembered by Everton fans. Relegation can be so chastening to a club, and we've seen it with Wigan, Bolton, Leeds and Blackpool, that losing Premier League status can begin this huge downward spiral. And I think that obviously fans can be very upset to be relegated, but actually it's the fear of falling into the abyss. That was the first Survival Sunday, and I hope you've enjoyed this episode. I hope you've enjoyed the second episode in the series. If you did, go back to the first episode if you haven't watched it, which is looking at the inaugural day of the Premier League and the formation of it. And the next one, we're going to look at 1994, 1995. So tell me what you think we might be focusing on there. I'm very interested. No clues though. Put it down below.